What happens now? The firefighter asked. The officer sighed. I'm on administrative leave. There's an investigation into my conduct, into the things I said and did. I'll probably be suspended, maybe fired. I don't know. Part of me thinks I should just quit, save everyone the trouble. Is that what you want? I don't know what I want. I know what I need to do. I need to change. I need to be better. I need to deal with the hate I've been carrying around. The prejudices I learned and never questioned. The fear that made me lash out at people who didn't deserve it. The officer reached into his pocket and pulled out a piece of paper. He slid it across the table. I wrote this. It's a public apology. I'm going to release it to the media. I'm going to own what I did, take responsibility, and commit to doing better. The firefighter picked up the paper and read it. It was honest and raw. The officer didn't make excuses. He didn't try to justify his actions. He simply acknowledged the harm he had caused and committed to change. That takes courage, the firefighter said, sliding the paper back across the table. It's the least I can do. It doesn't fix what I said. It doesn't erase the pain I caused. But it's a start. And I'm going to therapy, real therapy, to work on the issues that made me this way, to understand where this hate came from and how to let it go. The firefighter nodded. That's good. Change is possible. But it's not easy. I'm learning that, the officer paused. Can I ask you something? Sure. How do you do it? How do you face people who hate you and still choose kindness? How do you rise above it? The firefighter thought about his answer carefully. My father was a firefighter. He faced the same kind of hate I face, maybe worse. He told me that hate is like fire. If you feed it, it grows. If you let it consume you, it destroys everything. But if you refuse to give it fuel, if you meet it with water instead of gasoline, eventually it burns out. Water instead of gasoline, the officer repeated quietly. You can't control what other people say or think about you. You can only control who you choose to be. Every day is a choice. Be angry or be better. Feed the hate or starve it. I choose to be better. Even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. The officer wiped his eyes again. I don't deserve your forgiveness. No, you don't, the firefighter agreed. Not yet. Forgiveness isn't automatic. It's earned. Through actions, not words. Through real change, not just promises. But I believe people can change. I believe you can be better than you were. I want to be, the officer said. I really do. The firefighter stood up. Then prove it. Not to me, to yourself, to everyone you've hurt with your hate. Be the kind of officer who really serves and protects all people, not just the ones who look like you. He walked to the door and paused with his hand on the handle. He looked back at the officer one more time. That uniform you wear, it's supposed to stand for something. Justice, protection, service. Think about what those words really mean. Think about whether you've been living up to them, and then decide what kind of officer you want to be. What if I can't change? The officer asked. What if I'm too old? Too set in my ways? Then you'll stay who you are. And that's a choice too. But I don't think you came here just to apologize. I think you came here because you want to be different. You saw what real service looks like and it showed you what you weren't. Now you have to decide if you're going to do something about it. The firefighter opened the door. Before he left, he added one more thing. Maybe you should think about why you really became a cop in the first place. Before the fear, before the hate. What made you want to wear that uniform? Find that again. Build from there. He walked out, leaving the officer alone with his thoughts. As he walked down the hall back to the crew quarters, he felt lighter. The conversation had been difficult but necessary. He had said what he needed to say. Now it was up to the officer to do the work. Tom was waiting in the common room. How'd it go? As well as it could, I guess. He apologized. Said he wants to change. You believe him? The firefighter shrugged. I believe he wants to change. Whether he actually does the work, that's up to him. But at least he's trying. That's more than some people do. Danny came in carrying a box. Lieutenant, more letters came. And someone sent flowers, the firefighter smiled. Give the flowers to the station secretary. And put the letters with the others. I'll read them later. There's also this, Danny said, pulling out an envelope. It's from the mayor's office. Looks official. The firefighter opened it and read the letter inside. His eyes widened. They want to give me a medal. A ceremony at City Hall. That's amazing, Tom said. You deserve it. I don't need a medal. I was just doing my job. You were doing more than your job. a voice said from the doorway. The fire chief stood there with a proud smile. You were showing an entire city what it means to be a hero, not just in action but in character. Accept the medal. Let people celebrate what you did. The world needs more examples of choosing right over easy. The firefighter looked at the letter again. He thought about everything that had happened. The hate he had faced, the choice he had made, the life he had saved, the attention that followed. All of it. Okay, he said finally. I'll accept it. But only if my whole crew gets recognized too. We were all there. We all risked our lives that day. The chief smiled wider. I already told the mayor's office the same thing. You're a good leader. You know it's never about one person. It's about the team. That evening, as the sun set over the city, the firefighter stood on the roof of the fire station. He looked out at the streets below, at the buildings and homes they protected. Somewhere out there was Officer Mitchell, hopefully beginning his journey toward change. Somewhere out there were people who had watched the videos and maybe learned something about compassion. Somewhere out there were kids who might choose to become firefighters because they saw what real heroism looked like. He thought about his father, who had taught him that being a firefighter wasn't about fighting fires. It was about fighting for what was right. About being the kind of person who chose to help rather than hurt. Who chose understanding over judgment. Who chose life over death even when death seemed easier. The alarm bells rang inside the station. Another call. Another emergency. Another chance to serve. The firefighter smiled and headed for the pole. This was his life. This was his calling. And he wouldn't change it for anything in the world, because he knew who he was. He was a firefighter, and that meant something. Not because of the uniform he wore or the equipment he carried, but because of the choices he made. Every single day. To be better. To do better. To save everyone because everyone mattered. Even the people who didn't think he mattered. Especially them. Because maybe, just maybe, showing them compassion instead of hate could change them. Could make them better. Could stop the cycle of prejudice and fear. He slid down the pole and ran to the truck. His crew was already there, ready to go. Ready to save lives. Ready to be heroes. Not for glory or recognition, but because that's what they did. That's who they were. And as the fire truck pulled out of the station, sirens wailing and lights flashing, the firefighter knew one thing for certain. He had made the right choice. On that highway. In that ditch. In that moment when everything hung in the balance, he had chosen to be the person his father taught him to be. The person his uniform represented. The person the world needed more of. Someone who understood that real strength isn't about power or authority. It's about character. It's about choosing right over easy, compassion over anger, life over death, always, no matter what. The sun was shining bright on a Saturday afternoon. It was supposed to be a perfect day off. He had spent the morning at the gym, then stopped by his mother's house to fix her kitchen sink. Now he was driving through the quiet streets of Riverside Hills, one of the nicest neighborhoods in the city. His black sedan was clean and polished. The leather seats were comfortable. Soft jazz played on the radio. He was thinking about his son's basketball game later that evening. The boy was getting good, really good. Maybe good enough for a college scholarship someday. He smiled at the thought. His phone buzzed with a text from his wife asking him to pick up milk on the way home. He didn't touch the phone while driving. That could wait. The neighborhood was peaceful. Big houses with perfect lawns lined both sides of the street. Trees provided shade over the sidewalks. A few people were out walking their dogs. Kids rode bicycles in their driveways. It was the kind of place where nothing bad ever seemed to happen. He approached a four-way stop sign and pressed the brake. The car came to a complete stop. He looked left, then right, then left again. No cars were coming. He pressed the gas pedal gently and drove through the intersection. He continued down the street, still thinking about his son's game and whether they had enough hot dogs for the grill tonight. Then he saw the flashing lights in his rearview mirror. Red and blue lights cutting through the peaceful afternoon. His heart sank a little, but he stayed calm. He had been driving for 25 years and never had many problems. Maybe his brake light was out. Maybe his registration sticker wasn't visible. He put on his turn signal and pulled over to the side of the road. He rolled down his window and placed both hands on the steering wheel where they could be seen. This was what he had taught his own son to do. Keep your hands visible, stay calm, be polite, don't make sudden movements. These were the rules that kept you safe. In his mirror, he watched a police officer get out of the patrol car. The officer was white, maybe in his early 30s, with short brown hair and sunglasses. His uniform was neat and pressed. The officer walked slowly toward the car, his hand resting near his belt. His face was hard to read behind those dark sunglasses. The officer stopped at the window and looked down at him. "License and registration," the officer said. His voice was cold. No greeting. No explanation of why he had been pulled over. "Yes, sir," he replied calmly. "Can you tell me why you stopped me?" The officer didn't answer right away. He just stared. "License and registration now." He reached slowly toward the glove compartment, announcing what he was doing. "I'm reaching for my registration in the glove box." He opened it carefully and pulled out the papers. Then he reached for his wallet in his back pocket. "Getting my wallet now for my license." The officer, whose name tag read Miller, took the documents and studied them. He looked at the license, then at his face, then back at the license again. "This your car?" Miller asked. "Yes, sir, it is. You sure about that?" Miller's voice had an edge to it now. "This is an expensive car. How does someone like you afford a car like this?" He felt the familiar tightness in his chest. "Someone like you." He knew exactly what that meant. He took a deep breath. "I work hard, officer. The car is registered in my name. You have the registration right there." Miller looked at the papers again. "Where are you coming from?" "I was visiting my mother. Fixed her sink." "Where are you going?" "Home to my family." "What do you do for work?" Miller's questions kept coming, each one more pointed than the last. "I work for the city," he said. It was true after all. He just didn't say what he did for the city. Miller handed back the license but kept the registration. "Step out of the car." "Excuse me." "Why?" "Don't question me. Step out of the car, now." His heart was beating faster now. "Officer, I haven't done anything wrong. Can you please tell me why you pulled me over?" Miller's hand moved closer to his weapon. "You ran that stop sign back there. And now you're being difficult. Step out of the car or I'll drag you out." He knew he hadn't run the stop sign. He had stopped completely. He always did. But arguing wouldn't help. It never did. He opened the door slowly and stepped out onto the sidewalk. He was tall, over 6 feet, and in good shape from his regular workouts. Miller seemed to tense up as he got out. "Turn around. Hands on the car." "Officer, this isn't necessary. I stopped at that sign. I have done nothing wrong. I said turn around." Miller's voice was loud now. A woman walking her dog across the street stopped to watch. He turned and placed his hands on the warm metal of his car. He could feel people watching now. More neighbors were coming out of their houses. Some had their phones out. He felt embarrassed. He felt angry. But most of all, he felt tired. Tired of this same situation happening over and over. Tired of being treated like a criminal when he spent his life fighting crime. Miller patted him down roughly, checking his pockets. "What's this?" Miller pulled out his wallet again. "You already looked at my license, officer." Miller opened the wallet and went through it. There were credit cards, some cash, pictures of his wife and son, and there in a hidden pocket was his police badge. But Miller didn't open that section. He was too busy looking at the credit cards. "These yours? Or did you steal them too?" "I didn't steal anything. Those are my cards. My name is on them." A few neighbors had gathered on the sidewalk now. An elderly couple stood on their porch watching with concern. A younger man was recording everything on his phone. Miller seemed to notice the attention and didn't like it. "Everyone move along. This is police business." Miller shouted at the neighbors, but they didn't move. They just kept watching. He remained calm, his hand still on the car. Inside, his mind was racing. He could end this right now. He could tell Miller who he was. Show him the badge. Watch the officer's face change from aggressive to apologetic. But something stopped him. He wanted to see how this would play out. He wanted to be treated like any other citizen should be treated. With respect. With fairness. Without prejudice. "You got an attitude problem," Miller said, moving closer. "I don't like your attitude." "I'm being completely cooperative, officer." "I've done everything you asked. Don't talk back to me." Miller grabbed his arm and pulled it behind his back. The neighbors were talking now. He could hear their voices. "He's not doing anything wrong. This is too much. Someone should do something." Miller's grip tightened. "You're about 2 seconds away from being arrested. For what?" "What have I done?" Miller's face was red now. He was angry that this stop wasn't going the way he wanted. Angry that people were watching. Angry that this man in the nice car wasn't scared enough. For obstruction. For resisting. For whatever I say you did. He took another deep breath. His training kicked in. Stay calm, don't escalate. Let it play out. I am not resisting, officer. I am cooperating fully. Miller let go of his arm and stepped back. He pulled out his radio. This is Unit 12. I need backup at Riverside and Oak. I have a non-compliant suspect. Possibly stolen vehicle. Send additional units, non-compliant suspect. The words echoed in his head. He was standing still, hands visible, speaking politely. And he was being called non-compliant. He thought about his son. About all the talks they'd had. About how carefully he'd explained what to do in situations exactly like this. And here he was, doing everything right, and it still wasn't enough. The radio crackled with a response. Backup en route. Ida, 3 minutes. Miller crossed his arms and stood watching him. You just stay right there. Don't move a muscle. The elderly couple on the porch were shaking their heads. The man with the phone was still recording. A woman came out of her house with her own phone, filming from a different angle. The peaceful Saturday afternoon had turned into something else entirely. He waited, hands still on the car, and wondered who would show up when that backup arrived. The minutes felt like hours. He stood there with his hands on the car, the afternoon sun beating down on his back. Sweat formed on his forehead. It wasn't just from the heat. His mind was racing even though his body stayed perfectly still. Miller paced back and forth behind him, talking into his radio again. Yeah, suspect is secured. Waiting on backup. He's being real cooperative now. The way Miller said cooperative made it sound like a bad thing. More neighbors came outside. An old woman with white hair stood on her porch with her hand over her mouth. 2 teenage boys on bicycles stopped at the corner to watch. A young mother held her small daughter's hand and watched from behind a tree. Everyone looked confused. Everyone looked uncomfortable. He could hear them whispering to each other. What did he do? I don't know. I didn't see anything. This doesn't seem right. Their voices carried on the wind. The man who had been recording the whole time called out, Officer, what is he being charged with? Miller spun around. I told you people to move along. This is official police business. If you interfere, I'll arrest you too. The man didn't move. He just kept recording. I'm on the public sidewalk. I have the right to film police activity. Miller's face turned even redder. He pointed his finger at the man. You want to spend the night in jail? Keep testing me. The old woman on the porch spoke up. Her voice was shaky but firm. Young man, we saw everything. This gentleman stopped at that sign. We were sitting right here. We saw the whole thing. Miller ignored her. He walked back to his patrol car and leaned against it, arms crossed, watching. He looked at his phone, scrolled through something, then looked back at the man standing by the car. The man's legs were starting to hurt from standing so still. His back ached, but he didn't move. He knew any movement could be seen as threatening. Any shift could give Miller a reason to escalate things further. So he stood there like a statue, hands on the warm metal, breathing slowly. His phone buzzed in his pocket. Probably his wife wondering where he was, wondering about the milk. He couldn't answer it. Couldn't move to check it. For all he knew, reaching for his phone could get him hurt or worse. He thought about all the families he had met over the years, families who had lost sons, brothers, fathers in situations that started just like this, traffic stops that went wrong, misunderstandings that turned deadly. He had attended too many funerals, stood with too many crying mothers, and now here he was on the other side of it, feeling what they must have felt. That helpless feeling of doing everything right and still being treated like a criminal. A car drove slowly past, the driver staring. Then another car. Word was spreading through the neighborhood. Something was happening on Riverside and Oak. People were coming to see. Miller noticed the growing crowd and didn't like it. All of you need to go back inside. Now, nobody moved. They just stood there, watching, waiting. The elderly woman's husband came down from their porch. He was a tall man with gray hair and a kind face. He walked slowly, using a cane until he was at the edge of his property. Officer, I'm Harold Bennett. I've lived in this neighborhood for 40 years. I'm retired now, but I was a district attorney for 35 years. I've been watching this entire interaction, and I have to say, I don't understand what this man has done wrong. Miller's jaw clenched. Sir, with all due respect, you need to go back inside. I saw him stop at that sign, officer. Full stop. I was sitting on my porch. I had a clear view. Your eyes must be going bad then, old man. Now get back inside before I cite you for obstruction. Harold Bennett didn't move. His wife came down to stand beside him. We both saw it, she said quietly. He stopped completely. The man's heart swelled with gratitude. These people didn't know him. They had no reason to stand up for him, but they were doing it anyway. Because it was right. Because what they were witnessing was wrong. Miller walked toward the Bennetts. Last warning, get back inside. Harold stood his ground. I'm on my own property, officer. And I'm a witness to what happened here. You can't tell me to stop witnessing. Before Miller could respond, the sound of sirens filled the air. They were getting closer. The backup was arriving. Miller walked back to his patrol car looking satisfied. Help was coming. Now this difficult man would face consequences. The man at the car took a deep breath. This was the moment. When backup arrived, everything would change. One way or another, he thought about his options. He could still tell them who he was, flash his badge, end this whole thing. But something inside him said no. Not yet, let it play out a little longer. Let them show who they really are. His wife's face flashed in his mind. She would be so worried when he didn't come home on time. His son would be disappointed if he missed the basketball game. But this felt important somehow. This felt like something that needed to happen. The sirens were loud now. Very close. He could hear car doors slamming. Footsteps on the pavement. Multiple people approaching. Miller's voice was different now. More official. More controlled. Over here. I've got him secured. Ran a stop sign, gave me attitude, wouldn't comply with orders. I think the vehicle might be stolen. He's being real cagey about everything. The man's eyes widened slightly. That wasn't what happened. That wasn't what happened at all. Miller was lying, creating a story that didn't exist, painting him as dangerous, as non-compliant, as suspicious. All the things he wasn't. He heard new voices now. Professional voices. More officers arriving on scene. What's the situation? A woman's voice asked. Like I said, Miller continued, ran the stop sign. Wouldn't answer questions properly. Got defensive when I asked about the car. Refused to cooperate. That's when I called for backup. The man wanted to turn around, wanted to explain what really happened. But he stayed still. Hands on the car, waiting. The woman's voice came closer. Sir, can you tell me your name? He spoke clearly. My name is James Carter. I was pulled over for allegedly running a stop sign, which I did not do. I have cooperated fully with Officer Miller's instructions. I have not been defensive or aggressive. Multiple witnesses here can confirm that. Miller jumped in. Don't listen to him. He's been difficult from the start. Questioning everything. You know the type. You know the type. Those words hung in the air. Everyone knew what he meant. The neighbors shifted uncomfortably. The young man kept recording. The woman's voice was calmer now. Sir, I'm going to need you to stay exactly where you are. Don't move. We're going to sort this out. Yes, ma'am, he replied. His voice was steady, but inside his heart was pounding. This could go so many different ways, and not all of them ended well. He heard footsteps moving away. Quiet conversation between the officers. He couldn't make out the words, but he could hear the tones. Miller sounded defensive, insistent. The woman sounded questioning, uncertain. Harold Bennett's voice rang out again. Officers, my name is Harold Bennett. I'm a retired district attorney. My wife and I witnessed this entire interaction from our porch. This man stopped completely at the stop sign. Officer Miller has been aggressive and threatening throughout this encounter. This gentleman has been nothing but calm and cooperative. I'm willing to make an official statement to that effect. Another neighbor spoke up. I've got the whole thing on video. From the moment Officer Miller pulled him over, it's all here, a third voice. I recorded it too. From a different angle. He didn't do anything wrong. The man felt something shift in the air. The truth was coming out. Multiple witnesses. Video evidence. The story Miller was trying to tell was falling apart. The woman officer's voice was closer again. Officer Miller, I'm going to review your dash cam footage. Is that going to match what you told me? There was a pause. A long pause. The man could feel Miller's panic even though he couldn't see his face. Of course it will, Miller said, but his voice had lost its confidence. Check the footage. You'll see more footsteps, More quiet conversations. The man's legs were really hurting now. He had been standing in this position for almost 15 minutes. But he didn't dare move. Not yet. Then he heard the woman officer's voice again. It was different this time, tighter, more controlled, more professional. "Sir, you can stand up now. Put your hands down." He slowly stood up straight and turned around. For the first time, he could see who had arrived. 2 officers stood there. One was a woman with dark hair pulled back in a neat bun. Asian features. Serious expression. She wore lieutenant bars on her uniform. The other was a young officer, maybe 25, looking nervous and confused. The lieutenant was staring at him. Her eyes were wide, her mouth opened slightly. The color drained from her face. "Captain?" she said quietly. The gymnasium was loud with the sounds of sneakers squeaking on polished floors and the bouncing of basketballs. Captain Carter walked through the doors during halftime. The score was close. His son's team was down by 3 points. He scanned the bleachers and found his wife sitting in their usual spot. She waved when she saw him, relief clear on her face. He climbed up the bleachers and sat beside her. She took his hand immediately. "What happened? You look exhausted. I'll tell you everything later. How's he playing?" "Good, really good. He scored 12 points. But baby, what happened? You're never late to his games." He squeezed her hand. "I got pulled over." Her face changed instantly, fear, worry, anger. "Are you okay? Did they hurt you?" "I'm fine. I'm here. We'll talk about it at home." The second half started, and his son ran onto the court. The boy looked up into the stands and his face lit up when he saw his father. The captain smiled and gave him a thumbs up. His son nodded and turned his focus to the game. For the next 20 minutes, the captain tried to focus on basketball, tried to cheer for his son's team, tried to be present, but his mind kept going back to that street corner, to Miller's face, to the feeling of standing with his hands on the car while neighbors watched, to the moment when Chen recognized him and everything changed. His son's team won by 5 points. The boy had scored 8 more points in the second half, including the winning basket. After the game, they waited outside the locker room. When his son came out sweaty and grinning, he ran over and hugged his father. "Did you see that last shot, Dad?" "I saw it. That was beautiful. I'm proud of you. Why were you late? You never missed the first half." The captain glanced at his wife, then back at his son. Something came up. "I'll tell you about it when we get home." In the car on the way home, his wife kept looking over at him. "You're scaring me." "What happened?" "I'm okay, really, but it was something I need to tell both of you about together." At home, they sat in the living room. His son was still in his basketball uniform, a trophy from the game sitting on the coffee table. His wife held his hand. The captain took a deep breath and told them everything. From the moment he saw the lights in his rearview mirror to the moment he drove away. His wife's eyes filled with tears as he talked. His son's face grew harder, older somehow. When he finished, there was silence. Then his son spoke, his voice tight with emotion. "Everything you taught me. Everything you said about how to act during a traffic stop. You did all of that, and it still wasn't enough. It was enough to keep me safe," the captain said. "That's the most important thing. But it shouldn't be this way." His son's voice rose. "You're a police captain. You've dedicated your life to this job, and some racist cop treated you like a criminal. Like you were nothing." "I know, son. I know." His wife was crying now. "You could have been hurt. You could have been killed. And for what? For driving while black? For having a nice car? For existing?" The captain pulled her close. "But I wasn't hurt. I'm here, and now we're going to make sure this doesn't happen to other people." His son stood up and paced the room. "How many times has this happened to you? How many times have you not told us about?" The captain was quiet for a moment. "A few times. Over the years. But this time was different. This time I had the power to do something about it. And I'm going to use that power." "What are you going to do?" his wife asked, wiping her eyes. "I filed a formal complaint. Internal Affairs is investigating. Miller has been placed on leave. And I'm going to make sure this investigation goes all the way. I'm going to make sure every protocol is followed. Every rule is applied. I'm going to make sure there are consequences." His son stopped pacing and looked at his father. "Good. Because if there aren't consequences, then what's the point? What's the point of having rules and policies if they don't mean anything?" "Exactly. That's exactly why I'm doing this." They talked for another hour. His son had questions. His wife had fears. The captain tried to answer the questions and calm the fears. But deep down he had some of the same fears. He knew how these investigations could go. He knew how the system sometimes protected its own. But he also knew he had to try. Had to stand up. Had to speak out. That night he couldn't sleep. He lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying everything in his mind. His wife's breathing was soft and steady beside him. She had finally fallen asleep after hours of worry. He got up carefully and went to his home office. He sat at his desk and opened his laptop. He began typing, a detailed account of everything that happened. Every word that was said, every action that was taken. He wanted his own record, his own documentation, something that couldn't be changed or altered or lost. As he typed, he thought about all the times he had responded to calls as a young officer, all the traffic stops he had made. Had he ever treated anyone the way Miller treated him? He didn't think so, but he wondered. He questioned himself. He looked back at his own actions with more critical eyes. He finished typing as the sun came up. The house was still quiet. He saved the document and backed it up in 3 different places. Then he made coffee and sat at the kitchen table, watching the sunrise through the window. His wife found him there an hour later. "Did you sleep at all?" "No, I was writing everything down, making sure I had my own record." She poured herself coffee and sat across from him. "What happens now?" "Internal Affairs will investigate. They'll interview everyone involved. They'll review all the evidence. Then they'll make a recommendation to the chief. The chief will decide what happens to Miller. How long does that take? Could be weeks. Could be months. These things move slowly. And what about you? Are you okay?" He looked at his wife. Her face was worried, tired. She had barely slept either. "I'm angry. I'm tired. I'm sad. But I'm also determined. This isn't just about me anymore. This is about everyone who doesn't have a badge to show. Everyone who can't fight back. Everyone who gets treated like I got treated and has no recourse." She reached across the table and took his hand. "I'm proud of you. And I'm scared for you. Both things at the same time, I know. I feel the same way." The next few days were hard. The captain went to work on Monday morning and the news had already spread through the department. Officer Miller had been placed on leave. Captain Carter had filed a complaint. Everyone knew. Everyone was talking about it. Some officers came to him privately and expressed support. They told him stories of their own encounters with officers like Miller. They shared their frustrations with the system. They thanked him for standing up, but some officers were cold. They avoided eye contact in the hallways. They stopped talking when he entered a room. They saw him as a troublemaker, as someone who had betrayed the Brotherhood, as someone who should have handled it differently. The captain tried not to let it bother him. But it did. It bothered him that doing the right thing made him unpopular with some of his colleagues. It bothered him that standing up for his rights made people uncomfortable. It bothered him that some officers cared more about protecting Miller than about fixing the problem Miller represented. On Wednesday, he was called to a meeting with the chief. He walked into the chief's office and sat down. The chief was an older white man with gray hair and a stern face. He had been on the force for 40 years. He had seen everything. "Captain Carter," the chief said, "I've read the reports. I've seen the videos. I've talked to Lieutenant Chen and the Internal Affairs investigators. Yes, sir. This is a serious situation. One of our officers violated department policy, violated your rights as a citizen, made a traffic stop without probable cause, and then falsified his report when calling for backup. Yes, sir. That's accurate." The chief leaned back in his chair. "I want you to know that I support you 100%. What Miller did was wrong, unacceptable, and there will be consequences." The captain felt relief wash over him. "Thank you, sir. But I also want you to know that this is going to be difficult. For you, for the department, for everyone. The media is going to get hold of this. It's going to be a story, and not everyone is going to support what you've done." "I understand, sir." "Do you? Because I'm not sure you do. Some people are going to say you should have revealed your identity right away, that you baited Miller, that you wanted this to happen so you could make a point. They're going to question your motives, your judgment, your loyalty to the department." The captain felt anger rising in his chest. With respect, sir, I don't think I should have to reveal that I'm a police officer to be treated with basic respect during a traffic stop. I agree with you, completely. But not everyone will. And you need to be prepared for that. They talked for another 30 minutes. The chief explained the investigation process, the timeline, the possible outcomes. He warned the captain about the political pressures that might come, the attempts to sweep it under the rug, the people who would try to make this go away quietly. But I won't let that happen, the chief said firmly. I promise you. This will be handled properly. By the book. Miller will face consequences for his actions. The captain left the meeting feeling both better and worse. Better because he knew the chief supported him. Worse because he now understood how complicated this was going to become. That afternoon, he received a call from Harold Bennett, the retired district attorney. Captain Carter, I hope you don't mind me calling. I got your number from Lieutenant Chen. Not at all, Mr. Bennett. How can I help you? I wanted to let you know that my wife and I gave our statements to Internal Affairs yesterday. We told them everything we saw, and I also wanted to tell you that I've been making some calls. Old colleagues, people I know in the system. I'm making sure this investigation gets the attention it deserves. The captain felt his throat tighten with emotion. Mr. Bennett, you don't have to do that. Yes, I do. What happened to you shouldn't happen to anyone. And I've lived in this community long enough to know that Officer Miller has likely done this before, to people who didn't have the power to fight back. That needs to stop. Thank you, sir. I appreciate your support more than you know. You're welcome. And, Captain, don't let them wear you down. Don't let them make you doubt yourself. You did the right thing. The hard thing. But the right thing. After the call, the captain sat at his desk and stared at the wall. He thought about all the people who were supporting him. His wife, his son, Harold Bennett, Lieutenant Chen, many of his fellow officers. But he also thought about the people who weren't, the ones who saw him as the problem instead of seeing the real problem. His phone buzzed with a text message. It was from Lieutenant Chen. Sir, just wanted to let you know that Internal Affairs found something during their investigation. Officer Miller has 3 prior complaints for racial profiling. They were all marked as unfounded, but the investigators are now reopening them. Thought you should know. 3 prior complaints. 3 other people who had been treated the way he was treated. 3 other people who had filed complaints and gotten nowhere. The captain's hands clenched into fists. How many others were there who didn't file complaints? Who didn't have video evidence? Who didn't have witnesses? Who just accepted the mistreatment because they thought nothing would change anyway? He texted back. Thank you for letting me know. Please keep me updated. That evening at dinner, his son was quiet. He pushed his food around his plate but didn't eat much. The captain noticed. What's on your mind? His son looked up. I was thinking about what happened to you. And I was wondering, when I get pulled over, what should I do? Should I tell them my dad is a police captain? Would that keep me safe? The captain's heart broke a little. His son was 16 years old, already thinking about how to survive encounters with police. Already strategizing. Already afraid. You do everything I taught you. You stay calm. You keep your hands visible. You're polite. You comply with instructions. You don't make sudden movements. But will that be enough? His son's voice cracked. It wasn't enough for you. It kept me safe. I'm here, aren't I? But you shouldn't have had to go through that. You shouldn't have been treated that way. The captain got up and moved to sit beside his son. He put his arm around the boy's shoulders. You're right. I shouldn't have. And I'm trying to make sure it doesn't happen to other people. That's why I'm pursuing this complaint. That's why I'm not letting it go. But until things change, you have to be careful. You have to protect yourself. His son leaned against him. I hate this, Dad. I hate that we have to have this conversation. I hate that I have to be afraid of the people who are supposed to protect me. I know, son. I hate it too. His wife had tears running down her face. Both of my men having to calculate how to stay alive during a simple traffic stop. This is America in 2025. This is what we're still dealing with. They sat together in silence. The food got cold on their plates. But none of them moved. They needed this moment. This togetherness. This reminder that they had each other, even when the world outside felt hostile and unfair. Later that night, the captain's phone rang. It was Lieutenant Chen again. Sir, I'm sorry to call you so late. But there's been a development. The local news got hold of the story. They're running it tomorrow morning. I wanted you to hear it from me first. The captain's stomach dropped. How did they get it? I don't know. Someone leaked it. Maybe one of the witnesses, maybe someone in the department. I don't know, but it's out there now. They have the video footage. They're calling it Police Captain Profiled by His Own Officer. It's going to be everywhere by morning. Okay, thank you for the heads up. Sir, the chief wants to meet with you first thing tomorrow, before the news breaks. He wants to prepare you for what's coming. I'll be there. The captain hung up and told his wife. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath. So it's really happening. This is going to be public. Everyone is going to know. Yeah, everyone is going to know. Are you ready for that? He thought about it. Was he ready? Ready for his face to be on the news? Ready for his story to be public? Ready for the scrutiny and the questions and the judgment? I don't know if I'm ready. But it doesn't matter. It's happening whether I'm ready or not. She hugged him tight. We'll get through this, together. That night he barely slept again. He kept thinking about what the chief had said. About how people would question his motives. About how some would say he baited Miller. About how this was going to be difficult for everyone. But he also thought about Harold Bennett's words. About doing the right thing. The hard thing. And he thought about his son's face at dinner. The fear, the frustration, the unfairness of it all. When morning came, he put on his uniform and drove to headquarters. The chief was waiting for him in his office. Captain, sit down. We need to talk about today. Yes, sir. The story breaks in about an hour. My phone is already ringing. The mayor's office, city council, community leaders. Everyone wants to know what happened, what we're doing about it, what our response is going to be, and what is our response, sir? The chief looked at him directly. The truth. We're going to tell the truth. Officer Miller violated policy and violated your rights. He has been placed on leave. An investigation is ongoing, and there will be appropriate consequences based on the findings of that investigation. Thank you, sir. But, Captain, I need you to be prepared. The media is going to want to talk to you. Community groups are going to want to talk to you. Everyone is going to have opinions about what you should have done differently. How do you want to handle that? The captain thought for a moment. I want to talk to them. I want to tell my story. Not just for me, but for everyone who's been through something similar. For everyone who didn't have the power to fight back. The chief nodded slowly. Okay, but let's be strategic about it. Let's control the narrative as much as we can. I'll have our public information officer set up a press conference for this afternoon. You can make a statement, answer questions, tell your side of the story. Yes, sir, I can do that. Good. And Captain, remember what I said. This is going to be difficult. But you're not alone. You have support from me, from many officers in this department, from the community. Remember that when things get hard. The captain left the chief's office and went to his own. He turned on his computer and opened the news website. And there it was. The headline, the video, his story, for everyone to see. The video had been viewed over 1 million times by noon. The captain sat in his office watching the numbers climb. Comments poured in by the thousands, some supportive, some angry, some saying exactly what the chief had predicted they would say. He should have shown his badge right away. He was looking for a confrontation. Why didn't he just tell the officer who he was? But there were other comments too. This is what we've been saying for years. If this can happen to a police captain, imagine what happens to regular people. Thank you for not letting this go. This is why we don't trust the police. His phone rang constantly. News reporters, community leaders, friends he hadn't spoken to in years. Everyone wanted to talk. Everyone had questions. His secretary finally stopped letting calls through. She took messages instead. The stack grew higher by the hour. At 2 o'clock, he walked to the press conference room. It was packed. Cameras everywhere. Reporters with microphones. The lights were bright and hot. The chief stood at the podium first, making a statement, explaining the situation, promising a thorough investigation, committing to transparency and accountability. Then it was the captain's turn. He walked to the podium and looked out at the crowd. He had faced dangerous situations before, armed suspects, violent confrontations, life or death moments. But somehow this felt harder, more vulnerable. He was about to speak his truth to the world. And the world was watching. He cleared his throat and began. My name is Captain James Carter. I've been a police officer for 22 years. I've dedicated my life to serving this community, to protecting people, to upholding the law. And last Saturday afternoon, while driving through a neighborhood on my day off, I was pulled over by one of my own officers for a violation I did not commit. The room was silent except for the clicking of cameras. I want to be clear about something. This isn't about me being a captain. This is about me being a citizen, a black man driving through a nice neighborhood, and being treated as suspicious because of how I look. I chose not to reveal my identity because I wanted to be treated like any citizen should be treated. With respect, with dignity, with fairness. He paused and took a breath. What happened to me happens to too many people in this country every single day. The difference is that I have a badge. I have rank. I have power in the system. Most people don't have that. Most people just have to accept the mistreatment and move on. But I'm not accepting it. And I hope by standing up, by speaking out, I can help create change. Not just for me, but for everyone. The questions came fast after that. How did he feel? What did he want to happen to Officer Miller? Did he think the department had a racism problem? Would he continue to serve as a police officer? He answered each question carefully. Honestly, he didn't attack the department. But he didn't excuse what happened either. He talked about the need for reform, for better training, for accountability, for consequences when officers violated rights and policies. One reporter asked the question he had been waiting for.
Captain Carter, some people are saying you should have revealed your identity right away.
That you escalated the situation by not telling Officer Miller you were a police captain. What do you say to that? The captain looked directly at the camera. I say that I shouldn't need to be a police captain to be treated with respect during a traffic stop. Every citizen in this country deserves that respect. If the only way to get fair treatment is to have a badge, then we have a serious problem. And that's exactly the problem I'm trying to highlight. The room erupted with follow-up questions, but the public information officer stepped in. That's all the time we have today. Thank you. The captain walked out of the press conference and back to his office. His phone was buzzing with text messages. His wife. You were perfect. I'm so proud of you. His son. Dad, you killed it. Everyone at school is talking about it. Harold Bennett. Well said, Captain. Well said. But there were other messages too. Anonymous ones. Threatening ones. Messages calling him a traitor. Messages using racial slurs. Messages saying he should quit. Messages saying he wasn't a real cop. He deleted them without responding. Lieutenant Chen knocked on his door. Sir, can I come in? Of course, Lieutenant. She sat down across from him. That was a powerful press conference. You said everything that needed to be said. Thank you. How are things in the department? What's the mood? Chen chose her words carefully. Mixed. Some officers are supportive. They're glad you spoke up. But others, they're not happy. They think you made the department look bad. They think you should have handled it internally. And what do you think? I think you did the right thing. And I think Officer Miller has probably been doing this for years. The fact that he had 3 prior complaints that were all marked unfounded tells me everything I need to know. The system protected him. Until now. The captain nodded. That's what I'm hoping to change. The system that protects bad officers. The system that makes it hard to hold people accountable. Well, you've definitely started a conversation. The whole country is talking about this now. She wasn't wrong. By evening, the story was everywhere. National news. Cable networks. Social media. Everyone had an opinion. Community leaders were organizing. Civil rights groups were calling for reform. Police unions were releasing statements defending Miller and criticizing the captain. At home that night, the captain and his family ate dinner while watching the news coverage. It was strange seeing himself on TV, hearing his words repeated. Seeing his face alongside headlines about police misconduct and racial profiling. Dad, you're famous, his son said. There was pride in his voice, but also worry. Famous isn't the goal, son. Change is the goal. The doorbell rang. The captain's wife looked at him nervously. Are you expecting anyone? No. He got up and looked through the peephole. It was Harold Bennett and his wife, along with several other neighbors from Riverside Hills. He opened the door. Captain Carter. Harold said. I hope we're not intruding. But after we saw your press conference, we all talked and decided we needed to come see you. To show our support, the captain invited them in. There were about 10 neighbors total. All of them had been there that Saturday afternoon. All of them had witnessed what happened. An older black woman spoke first. Captain, I'm Martha Williams. I live 3 houses down from where you were stopped. I watched the whole thing from my window. And I want you to know that what you're doing matters. My grandson is 14 years old. He's scared of the police, and he should be able to feel safe around them. Maybe because of you, things will be different for him. A young white man stepped forward. I'm Kevin. I'm the one who recorded the video on my phone. I posted it online because I thought people needed to see what really happened. I hope that was okay. It was more than okay, the captain said. That video is evidence. It's truth. Thank you for recording it. One by one, the neighbors spoke. They shared their support, their appreciation, their own stories of witnessing police misconduct over the years. Some had never spoken up before. Some had tried and been ignored. All of them felt like maybe this time would be different. Harold was the last to speak. Captain, my wife and I have lived in that neighborhood for 40 years. We've seen a lot of changes. But one thing that hasn't changed enough is how black men are treated by police. You stood there with such dignity, such grace. And you're speaking up with such courage. You're making a difference. The captain felt overwhelmed by their support. These were people he didn't know a week ago. But they had stood up for him. Recorded for him. Testified for him. They had chosen to get involved when it would have been easier to look away. After the neighbors left, his wife hugged him tight. You're not alone in this. You have so many people supporting you. I know. I'm starting to realize that. The next few days were a blur. More interviews, more meetings, more conversations about reform and accountability. The story wouldn't go away. It grew bigger. More people came forward with their own stories of being profiled by police. More officers came forward with stories of witnessing misconduct and not speaking up. The captain became the face of a movement he hadn't meant to start. People called him brave, called him a hero, but he didn't feel brave. He just felt like someone who was tired of the way things were. Tired of having to teach his son how to survive traffic stops. Tired of being seen as suspicious in his own community. Tired of bad officers making all officers look bad. On Thursday, a week after the incident, the captain received a call from the internal affairs investigator. Captain Carter, I wanted to update you on our investigation. We've completed all the interviews. We've reviewed all the evidence, and we've discovered some very disturbing patterns. What kind of patterns? Officer Miller has been conducting racially biased traffic stops for at least 3 years. We reopened his prior complaints and found they were all legitimate. The initial investigations were inadequate. We also pulled all his traffic stop data and found a clear pattern. He stops black and Hispanic drivers at a rate 5 times higher than white drivers in the same neighborhoods. And most of those stops result in no citations or arrests, meaning they were pretextual stops with no real basis. The captain felt anger and vindication at the same time. So this wasn't just about me. No, sir. This was a pattern of discriminatory behavior. And unfortunately, the system failed to catch it sooner. What happens now? Our recommendation is going to the chief tomorrow. I can't tell you what it says, but I think you'll be satisfied with our findings. Thank you for doing a thorough investigation. Captain, if I'm being honest, your status helped. If you had been a regular citizen without rank, I'm not sure this investigation would have been as comprehensive, and that's something we need to change too. The investigator was right. The system had worked for him because he was a captain. But it should work for everyone. That was the whole point. Friday morning, the chief called the captain into his office again. Captain Carter, the internal affairs investigation is complete. The recommendation is termination for Officer Miller. Multiple policy violations, pattern of discriminatory behavior, falsifying reports. The list goes on. And do you agree with that recommendation, sir? I do, completely. I'm terminating Officer Miller effective immediately. His actions were unacceptable, and they don't reflect the values of this department or the oath we all took. The captain nodded. Thank you, sir, but there's more. This investigation revealed systemic problems. Problems with how we handle complaints, how we investigate our own officers, how we track patterns of behavior. I want to fix those problems, and I want you to help me. Me, sir? Yes, I'm creating a new position. Director of Police Accountability and Community Relations, and I want you to fill it. You'll have the authority to review complaints, oversee investigations, implement new training programs, and work directly with community groups. You'll report directly to me, and you'll have the power to make real changes. The captain was stunned. Sir, I don't know what to say. Say yes. Use what happened to you to make sure it doesn't happen to anyone else. Turn this terrible experience into something positive. The captain thought about his son, about Martha Williams' grandson, about all the people who deserved better from their police department. Yes, sir. I'll do it. The chief called a department-wide meeting for Monday morning. Every officer who could be there was there. The auditorium was full. The captain sat in the front row, feeling hundreds of eyes on the back of his head. The tension in the room was thick. Everyone knew what this meeting was about. The chief walked to the podium and the room fell silent. Good morning. I'm going to get straight to the point. As you all know by now, an incident occurred last Saturday involving Captain James Carter and Officer Derek Miller. An internal affairs investigation has been completed. I've reviewed their findings, and I've made my decision. The captain could hear people shifting in their seats behind him. Whispers. Tension. Officer Derek Miller has been terminated from this police department effective immediately. The investigation revealed a pattern of discriminatory policing that violated department policy, violated citizens' rights, and violated the oath we all took to serve and protect. This behavior is unacceptable. It will not be tolerated, and there will always be consequences for it. Some officers nodded. Others looked down at their feet. A few whispered to each other. But this isn't just about one officer, the chief continued. The investigation revealed systemic problems in how we handle complaints and investigate misconduct. Problems that allowed Officer Miller's behavior to continue for years. That ends now. We are implementing new oversight procedures, new training programs, new accountability measures, and Captain Carter is going to lead that effort as our new Director of Police Accountability and Community Relations. The chief gestured for the captain to join him at the podium. The captain stood and walked up the steps. As he turned to face his fellow officers, he saw a mix of expressions. Some looked supportive. Some looked angry. Some looked uncertain. I want to say something to all of you, the captain began. What happened to me was wrong. But I know most officers in this department are good people, people who took this job to help others, to serve their community, to make a difference. Officer Miller's actions don't represent all of you, but his actions do hurt all of you. They damage the trust between police and community. They make your jobs harder. They put you at risk. He paused and looked around the room. I'm not doing this to attack police. I'm doing this to protect police, to protect good officers who do their jobs with integrity, to get rid of bad officers who make everyone look bad. We have to police ourselves. We have to hold each other accountable, because if we don't, we lose the trust of the people we're supposed to serve. And without that trust, we can't do our jobs. Some officers started nodding. The captain saw Lieutenant Chen in the third row, nodding firmly. He saw Officer Rodriguez, the young officer who had been at the scene, looking thoughtful. Change is hard, the captain continued. Accountability is uncomfortable, but it's necessary. I'm asking for your support, not for me, but for this department, for this community, for the future of policing. We can do better. We have to do better, and we will do better. When he finished, there was silence for a moment. Then one officer started clapping. Then another, then more. Within seconds, half the room was applauding. The other half sat in silence, but at least half supported him. That was something. After the meeting, officers approached him in small groups. Some offered congratulations. Some asked questions about the new position. Some shared their own concerns about accountability and reform. But some officers walked past him without making eye contact. Some gave him cold stares. Some whispered among themselves and looked in his direction. Lieutenant Chen pulled him aside. Sir, that was powerful. But you know not everyone is happy about this. I know. Change always creates resistance. It's more than resistance. Some officers are really angry. They think you betrayed the brotherhood. They think you should have kept this quiet, handled it internally. And what do you think, Lieutenant? I think you did exactly what a leader should do. You stood up for what's right, even when it was hard, even when it cost you. Thank you, Chen, that means a lot. That afternoon, the captain started his new role. He met with community leaders, civil rights groups, neighborhood associations, church leaders, people who had been fighting for police reform for years, people who had lost trust in the department, people who had their own stories of mistreatment. Martha Williams was at the first community meeting. So was Harold Bennett, Kevin, the young man who recorded the video, others from the neighborhood, and dozens more from across the city. An older black man stood up to speak. His voice shook with emotion. My son was pulled over 3 years ago. Officer Miller was the one who stopped him. My son didn't do anything wrong, but Officer Miller searched his car, made him sit on the curb for an hour, humiliated him in front of everyone. My son filed a complaint. Nothing happened. The complaint was marked unfounded, and Officer Miller kept right on doing what he was doing. The captain listened, took notes. I'm sorry that happened to your son, and I'm sorry the system failed him, but we're going to change that system. I promise you. A young Hispanic woman spoke next. I was stopped by Officer Miller last year. He said my brake light was out, but my brake light was fine. He asked if the car was mine, if I had papers. He talked to me like I was an illegal immigrant even though I was born here. I'm a citizen. This is my country. But he made me feel like I didn't belong. Story after story, person after person, a pattern so clear it was undeniable. Officer Miller had been targeting people based on race for years, and the system had let it happen. The captain spoke to the group. I hear you. I believe you, and I'm going to work every day to make sure this doesn't happen anymore. But I need your help. I need you to keep reporting when you see misconduct. I need you to keep recording when something wrong happens. I need you to stay engaged with this process, because we can't fix this without community involvement. Harold Bennett stood up. Captain Carter is offering us something we haven't had before. Real access, real accountability, real partnership. We should take that offer. We should work with him, give him a chance to prove that change is possible. Most people in the room nodded, but some were skeptical. They had heard promises before. They had been disappointed before. Trust had to be earned, not given. Over the next few weeks, the captain worked harder than he ever had in his career. He reviewed every complaint that had been filed in the past 5 years. He interviewed officers who had witnessed misconduct but stayed silent. He talked to citizens who had been mistreated but never filed complaints because they thought nothing would change. He created new training programs focused on implicit bias and de-escalation. He implemented a new complaint review process with community oversight. He started a data collection program to track traffic stops and identify patterns of discriminatory policing. He met with community groups every week to report on progress and hear concerns. It wasn't easy. Some officers resisted. Some community members stayed skeptical. Change moved slowly, but it was moving. One evening, the captain came home exhausted. His wife met him at the door. You look tired. I am tired. But it's good work. Important work. His son came downstairs. He was holding his car keys. Dad, can we talk? Of course. What's up? I'm going to drive to Mike's house, and I realized I'm not scared. Before, I would have been worried about getting pulled over, worried about what might happen, but now, I don't know. I feel different, like maybe things are actually changing. The captain felt tears prick his eyes. This was why he was doing all of it, so his son could drive without fear. So Martha Williams's grandson could grow up feeling safe around police, so everyone could be treated fairly regardless of how they looked. Be safe, the captain said. Text me when you get there. After his son left, the captain sat with his wife on the couch. Do you think what I'm doing is making a difference? I know it is. I see it in our son. I hear it from people in the community. I read it in the letters and emails you're getting. You're changing things. One policy at a time. One officer at a time. One person at a time. It feels slow. Change always does. But it's happening. The next day, the captain received a call from the chief. Captain Carter, can you come to my office? When he arrived, the chief wasn't alone. The mayor was there. So was the city attorney. They all looked serious. Captain, sit down, the chief said. We need to discuss Officer Miller. What about him? The city attorney spoke. Miller has filed a wrongful termination lawsuit. He's claiming he was fired without due process. He's claiming racial discrimination in reverse, and he's asking for his job back plus damages. The captain felt his blood pressure rise. Racial discrimination? He profiled me. He had a pattern of discriminatory behavior. We know, the mayor said calmly, and we're going to fight this. We have all the evidence, all the witness statements, all the data from his traffic stops. But it's going to be a battle. His union is backing him. He's got lawyers, and they're going to try to make you look like the bad guy. Let them try. The truth is on our side. The chief leaned forward. Captain, they're going to go after you personally. Your motives, your judgment. They're going to say you baited Miller into showing his bias, that you wanted this to happen, that you're using this for publicity or career advancement. Are you prepared for that? The captain thought about it, about what was at stake, about how hard this fight was going to be, about the personal cost. Yes, sir. I'm prepared. Because this isn't about me. It's about doing what's right. It's about accountability. It's about making sure officers like Miller can't keep hurting people. The mayor nodded. Good, because we're with you. All the way. This fight isn't just about Miller. It's about what kind of police department we want to be, what kind of city we want to be. They talked for another hour about legal strategy, about public relations, about preparing for the long fight ahead. When the captain finally left, he felt the weight of it all on his shoulders. This wasn't over. It was just beginning. That night, he called Harold Bennett. Mr. Bennett, Officer Miller is suing for wrongful termination. He's going to fight this. Harold was quiet for a moment. Good. Good? Yes, good. Because now everything will come out in court. All the evidence. All the patterns. All the other victims. He thinks he's going to win, but he's actually going to expose himself. And hopefully that exposure will lead to even more change. Sometimes you have to go through the fire to get to the other side. The captain smiled. You're right. Thank you. Captain, do you know why my wife and I spoke up that day? Why we gave statements and made calls and supported you? No, why? Because 40 years ago, when we bought our house in that neighborhood, we faced discrimination. People didn't want us there. Some were openly hostile. But a few people stood up for us, welcomed us, defended us. And I learned then that staying silent when you witness injustice makes you part of the problem. We spoke up for you because it was our turn to stand up. And we'll keep standing up all through this lawsuit and beyond. After the call, the captain sat in his home office and thought about everything. About how one traffic stop had led to all of this. About how choosing not to show his badge had revealed a truth that needed to be revealed. About how standing up had sparked a movement for change. It was going to be a long fight. Miller would fight back. Some officers would resist reform. Some community members would stay skeptical. Change would be slow and hard and frustrating, but it was worth it. For his son. For Martha Williams' grandson. For everyone who deserved to be treated fairly. For the future of policing. For justice. He opened his laptop and started writing. A memo about the next phase of reforms. New policies to implement. More training to develop. More bridges to build with the community. There was so much work to do. But he was ready for it. Because sometimes the right thing to do is also the hardest thing to do. And you do it anyway. 3 months had passed since that Saturday afternoon. The captain stood at his window looking out at the city. So much had changed. So much was still changing. The journey wasn't over. Maybe it would never be over. But progress was being made. The lawsuit from Miller was moving through the court slowly. His lawyers were aggressive. They filed motions. They made accusations. They tried to paint the captain as someone with an agenda, but the evidence was too strong. The pattern was too clear. Every motion they filed was denied. Every argument they made fell apart under scrutiny. More victims had come forward. Dozens of them. People who had been stopped by Miller over the years. People who had been profiled, searched, threatened, humiliated. Their stories were all remarkably similar, and together they painted a picture that couldn't be ignored. The captain's new position was demanding. He worked 12-hour days, sometimes more. But the work was rewarding. Changes were happening. Real changes. The new complaint system was working. Citizens could file complaints online, by phone, or in person. Every complaint was reviewed by a community oversight board before internal affairs even got involved. Nothing could be swept under the rug anymore. Transparency was the rule, not the exception. The training program was making a difference. Every officer in the department had to go through the new implicit bias training. The captain taught many of the sessions himself. He shared his story, showed the video, asked officers to examine their own biases and assumptions. Some officers resisted, but most were receptive. Most wanted to be better. The data collection program revealed troubling patterns across the department. Not just with Miller, but with other officers too. Some were conducting more stops of minorities than white citizens. Some were using force more often with people of color. The data didn't lie. And now that the captain could see the patterns, he could address them. Several other officers had been disciplined. One was fired. Others were retrained or reassigned. The message was clear. Discriminatory policing would not be tolerated. Accountability was real. The community was starting to trust again. Slowly, carefully, but trust was growing. The weekly meetings with community groups continued. The captain listened more than he talked. He learned about their concerns, their fears, their hopes for change, and he worked to address them all. Martha Williams attended every meeting. She had become a partner in the reform effort. She organized other community members. She advocated for change. She held the department accountable. And the captain valued her voice more than she probably knew. Harold Bennett stayed involved too. He reviewed policies, offered legal guidance, connected the captain with other experts in police reform. He and his wife had become friends with the captain and his family. They had dinner together once a month. They celebrated each small victory in the reform process. Kevin, the young man who recorded the video, started a community watch program. He trained people on their rights during police encounters. He taught them how to record safely and legally. He empowered people to be witnesses when they saw something wrong. The captain supported his work completely. On a Tuesday morning, the captain received a call from the chief.
Captain, can you come to my office?
And bring your family. My family, sir? Yes, all of them. The captain called his wife. She was at work but said she could get away. His son was at school, but the captain got permission to pull him out for a few hours. They all met at police headquarters and walked to the chief's office together. When they entered, the room was full. The chief, the mayor, city council members, community leaders, Harold and his wife, Martha Williams, Kevin, Lieutenant Chen, even some news cameras. What's going on? The captain whispered to his wife. I have no idea, she whispered back. The chief stepped forward. Captain Carter, 3 months ago you experienced something that no officer should ever experience. You were profiled by one of your own. But instead of staying silent, instead of letting it go, you stood up. You spoke out. And you started a movement for change that is transforming this department and this city. The chief picked up a plaque from his desk. Today, the city council voted unanimously to honor you with the Medal of Courage and Service. This award is given to officers who go above and beyond the call of duty, who show exceptional courage in the face of adversity, who serve their community with distinction and integrity. Captain, you embody all of those qualities. The room erupted in applause. The captain was stunned. His wife squeezed his hand. His son looked proud. The mayor stepped forward. Captain Carter, you turned a painful experience into positive change. You didn't let anger or bitterness win. You chose to build bridges instead of walls. You chose accountability over silence. You chose progress over comfort. On behalf of the entire city, thank you. More applause. The captain accepted the medal, his throat tight with emotion. When the room quieted, they asked him to say a few words. He looked at his wife and son, then at Harold and Martha and Kevin, then at Lieutenant Chen and the other officers present. Thank you for this honor. But I want to be clear about something. I'm not a hero. I'm just someone who refused to accept that things couldn't change. And I didn't do this alone. This change happened because people stood up. Harold and his wife gave witness statements. Kevin recorded the truth. Martha organized the community. Lieutenant Chen supported reform. Every person in this room played a part. He paused and looked directly at the cameras. If there's a lesson in my story, it's this. Change is possible. But only if we're willing to speak up when we see something wrong. Only if we're willing to stand together. Only if we're willing to hold ourselves and each other accountable. What happened to me shouldn't happen to anyone, and I'm going to keep working until it doesn't. After the ceremony, people came up to shake his hand and offer congratulations. But the moment that meant the most was when his son pulled him aside. Dad, I'm proud of you. Not just for what you did, but for how you did it. You stayed calm. You didn't get angry or bitter. You just kept pushing for what was right. That's who I want to be. The captain hugged his son tight. You already are, son. You already are. That evening, the captain drove home alone. He took the long way through Riverside Hills, past the houses with perfect lawns, past the trees providing shade, and past that stop sign, the same stop sign where everything started. He came to a complete stop and sat there for a moment. In his rearview mirror, he could see no flashing lights this time. No officer pulling him over. Just a quiet evening in a peaceful neighborhood. But he thought about that day 3 months ago. About standing with his hands on the car. About the fear and frustration and anger. About the choice he made not to reveal his badge. About everything that came after. He thought about Miller fighting a lawsuit he couldn't win. Not because the system was rigged against him, but because the truth was too clear. He wondered if Miller would ever understand what he did wrong. If he would ever see his victims as human beings deserving of respect. The captain hoped so, but he wasn't counting on it. He thought about all the people who had been hurt before him. The ones who filed complaints that went nowhere. The ones who didn't file complaints because they thought nothing would change. He thought about how the system had failed them, and how he was working every day to make sure it wouldn't fail anyone else. But mostly he thought about the future. About his son driving without fear. About Martha's grandson growing up in a world where police served and protected everyone equally. About a department where accountability was real and bias was confronted head-on. About communities that trusted their police and police who earned that trust every single day. It wasn't perfect yet. There was still work to do. Still officers who resisted change. Still communities that were skeptical. Still systems that needed reform. But progress was happening. Real, measurable progress. A car pulled up behind him at the stop sign. The captain lifted his foot off the brake and drove forward. The car behind him followed. Both drivers moving through the intersection peacefully, safely, without incident. That's what normal should look like, the captain thought. That's what every traffic stop should be. Routine, respectful, fair, no fear, no bias, no drama. Just people going about their lives, protected and served by officers who saw them as human beings first. He drove on, toward home, toward his family, toward the rest of his life. There would be more challenges ahead, more resistance to change, more work to be done. But he was ready for it, because he had learned something important in the past 3 months. One person speaking up could make a difference, but many people speaking up together could change the world. When he pulled into his driveway, his wife and son were waiting for him on the porch. They had hung a banner. "Congratulations, Dad," it said. Neighbors were gathered in the yard. Harold and his wife. People from the community meetings. Even Lieutenant Chen and Officer Rodriguez had stopped by. The captain got out of his car and looked at all these people. People who had supported him, stood with him, fought beside him. People who believed in change and were willing to work for it. He walked up the driveway and his son ran to meet him. They hugged. His wife joined them. The three of them stood there together, surrounded by community, surrounded by support, surrounded by hope. "How does it feel?" his wife whispered. 3 months ago you were pulled over. Today you got a medal. How does it feel?" The captain thought about it. It feels like the beginning, not the end. The beginning of something better. That night, after everyone left and the house was quiet, the captain sat at his computer. He opened his work email and saw a message from a young officer he didn't know. The subject line read, "Thank you." He clicked it open. "Captain Carter, I'm a new officer. I've been on the force for 6 months. Your story and your reforms have already changed how I think about policing. I went through your implicit bias training last week. It made me examine assumptions I didn't even know I had. Today I made a traffic stop. A young black man in a nice car. Before your training, I might have approached that stop with suspicion, but instead I approached it with respect. I treated him the way I would want to be treated. The way everyone should be treated. And it went perfectly. No problems, no drama, just a professional interaction between an officer and a citizen. I wanted you to know that your work is making a difference. Thank you for standing up. Thank you for speaking out. Thank you for making us better." The captain read the message 3 times. Then he saved it in a folder marked "Why We Do This." The folder was getting full. Messages from citizens who felt safer. Messages from officers who were learning. Messages from parents who had hope for their children. Messages that reminded him why the hard work mattered. He replied to the young officer. "Thank you for your message. And thank you for treating that young man with respect. That's what good policing looks like. Keep it up." The department needs more officers like you. Before closing his computer, he looked at his calendar for tomorrow. 2 community meetings, a training session with new recruits, a review of the month's complaint data, a meeting with civil rights lawyers about additional reforms, a press conference about the department's progress, and somehow he needed to fit in his son's basketball game. It was a lot, but it was good work. Important work. World-changing work. He shut down his computer and walked upstairs. His son was already asleep. The captain stood in the doorway and watched him for a moment. The boy looked peaceful, safe, unafraid. That's what he was fighting for. That peace, that safety, that freedom from fear, not just for his son, but for every young person in the city, every family, every community. He went to his own bedroom where his wife was reading in bed. He changed into his pajamas and climbed in beside her. She put her book down and turned to him. "Are you okay?" she asked. She always knew when he was thinking heavy thoughts. "Yeah," he said. "I'm okay. I'm tired. But I'm okay. You're doing good things. Important things. You know that, right?" "I know. But there's so much more to do. There always will be. But tonight, just be proud of how far you've come, how much has changed, how many lives you've touched." She was right. He needed to acknowledge the progress, not just focus on the work ahead. 3 months ago, he was standing on a street corner, hands on his car, being treated like a criminal. Today, he received a medal for courage. 3 months ago, complaints were ignored and patterns were hidden. Today, accountability was real and transparency was the norm. 3 months ago, officers like Miller operated without consequences. Today, they faced justice. Things were changing. Maybe not fast enough, maybe not completely, but changing nonetheless, and he was part of that change. A big part. He turned off the light and closed his eyes. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new resistance, new work. But tonight he could rest. He could be grateful. He could be proud. As he drifted off to sleep, his last thought was of that stop sign. The place where everything changed. The place where he made a choice to stand up instead of staying silent. The place where his story became everyone's story. And he smiled, knowing that because of that moment, because of that choice, the world was a little bit better, a little bit fairer, a little bit more just, that was enough. For today, that was enough.